Hello, listeners, and welcome to another episode of Natasha Explains It All. In this episode, I want to do kind of a criminal justice roundup. I want to share three positive, hope inspiring stories about updates in legislation policy that have happened recently that are good news. They're good news stories, and they tie to prior issues that I've discussed on this podcast. So there's three updates that I want to share, and two of them are related to voting rights, and one of them is related to mail while incarcerated. And if you recall in episode 3, we talked about felony disenfranchisement, so how common it is in the United States to deny people with criminal records the right to vote. And then in part 5 of the criminal court series, I talked about prison mail in jails. So the third update is going to be related to that. So kind of building off some prior episodes. So starting with the voting rights news, we have some positive news coming out of the states of New Mexico as well as Minnesota. And what happened in these two states? Well, when it comes to New Mexico expanded the right to vote for people who are on probation and parole. And the immediate effect of this law, which is called the New Mexico Voting Rights Act or House Bill 4, is it will, as I said, it would immediately restore the right to vote for people who are on probation and parole. And currently, the estimate in terms of people who would be immediately impacted by this is about 11,000 people. So that is a lot of people who are now going to be able to participate in the political process who otherwise, who prior to this were not able to. Now, and as of the time that I am recording this episode, um, uh, as of the time that I'm recording this episode, this bill has passed the legislature and is on its way to the governor's desk. But the governor is expected to sign because she's a big supporter of the legislation. So that is really, really exciting and one development to make progress in ending the practice of felony disenfranchisement. And again, if you want more background context on how felony disenfranchisement works and how it's a legacy of slavery, how it's a modern day version of the Three-Fifths Clause, well, the combination of felony disenfranchisement plus prison gerrymandering is a legacy of slavery and the Three-Fifths Clause. So, anyway, so we have really good news um, from New Mexico in expanding the right to vote for people who are on probation and parole. So basically, you can't vote, you still can't vote if you are incarcerated, but if you are out on either probation or parole, then you are able to vote. And again, more than 11,000 people, um, as of right now, are now eligible to vote, which is really exciting. And then we have a similar update from the state of Minnesota. Minnesota has also, uh, excuse me, the state of Minnesota has also expanded the rights of people with felony convictions. And that, as of now, has been signed into law by the governor. And that, similar to the New Mexico law, restores the right to vote for people with felony convictions who have completed their term of incarceration. So it's not expanding the right to vote to people who are currently incarcerated, but anyone who's out um, is now has their right to vote restored. And the impact in the state of Minnesota is even bigger because the estimates there are that there's about 55,000 people who now will be able to vote who previously weren't able to vote. Um, and that is huge. That is really, really huge. So we have expansion of the right to vote in both New Mexico and in Minnesota, allowing those who have felony convictions who had their right to vote stripped of them under prior laws, now having that right to vote restored. And one statistic that I don't believe I shared in episode 3 in talking about felony disenfranchisement um, is a statistic that comes from the Sentencing Project, which is a leading organization on all criminal justice issues. And they issued a report that there's approximately 4.6 million Americans who are disenfranchised due to a felony conviction. And so imagine that there are 4.6 million Americans across the country who cannot vote for no other reason than a felony conviction. And I will include a link to that sentencing project report in the show notes. And so, with this move in New Mexico as well as Minnesota, we're making some progress in addressing this fundamentally racist policy of denying those with felony convictions of the ability to vote. Um, and just to add on, it's not that we need this reason, but there is also data out there showing that when people are allowed to vote and participate in the civic process, that is a pro social behavior, right? That is a pro reentry behavior. It allows someone to feel like their voice matters and they're allowed to participate in society. It actually contributes to rehabilitation. So, as if we needed another reason to restore the right to vote, even though it should not have been removed in the first place. Now, the third update I want to share is from the not the state; it's from the city of New York. And this relates to Rikers, which is the main jail in New York City. It is a infamous, horrible, horrible jail that advocates have been trying to shut down for decades. And we're making enormous progress in doing so. But then, unfortunately, Eric Adams became the mayor of New York City, and he is just horrible on these issues. He's a career cop, and he is very much of the, throw him away, lock him up and throw away the key kind of guy. So he's not going to get behind any type of closure of Rikers. However, there is a win recently when it comes to Rikers. And in part 5 of my criminal court series, I talked about how there is this nationwide trend to privatize prison and jail mail. So, as another way for private corporations to make more money at the expense of incarcerated people, and honestly, at the expense of public safety and well being, because mail and having like physical mail and having connections with the outside world helps people stay mentally well while they're incarcerated, contributing to them having fewer disciplinary and behavioral issues while they're incarcerated, and then also making it easier for them to transition to the outside once they're released. Anyway, so corporations across the country have been under these completely false narratives that it's necessary for safety, want to privatize and digitize all mail. So rather than you receiving, your physical mail, letters from your loved ones, photos from your loved ones, they're now going to this third party corporation that will scan it and then send you just the scan, which you will read on a tablet in prison or in jail. And you have to pay for all of this, right? The person who's sending it to you has to pay for it, and then you have to pay for it to be able to view it, and then vice versa. When you send out mail, the company will scan it and send it to your loved one. And that raises all kinds of privacy issues, like in the quality of scans. And anyway, I go into that more in episode 5 of the criminal court series. So, why is New York City relevant to this discussion? Well, Rikers was considering making this move. Rikers jail was considering a proposal by Eric Adams, by the new mayor of New York City, to implement this new thing, to make all physical mail, be digitized, be scanned by some private third party that was going to make a bunch of money off of this. And in kind of really a surprise, there is a city jails oversight board in New York City, and they refused to vote on the proposal. And so, in refusing to vote on the proposal, the status quo remains, and physical mail can continue to, go in and out of the jail, which is amazing and honestly a surprising victory. Now, I'm sure this isn't the end, and the Adams administration may try again, but it is, it's a big win, and particularly because the private vendor who is soliciting this contract is called Securus, and Securus is one of the like one of the top private corporations that profits off of people being incarcerated. And and one of the ways, right, that it just makes this so gross is that Securus is also the contractor for the tablets. So as I was saying, not only are they going to scan your mail, but in order for you to even read your mail, you would have to use a tablet, which you would also have to pay for from Securus, right? So multiple layers of having to pay to access your physical mail, whereas previously, um, the only cost is the cost of the stamp. I mean, and in terms of within jails and prisons, it varies a lot, but most of the time, inmates are issued, some allotment of letters and paper on a weekly, or I'm not sure, it varies, or kind of some type of regular schedule. Um, but anyway, and so instead of that, if you're going to a digitized system, you're not only having to pay for the actual transmission of the mail service, then also the tablet to be able to read whatever mail is sent to you. So, as of right now, such a proposal to digitize mail at Rikers Jail in New York City has failed, because the oversight board has incredibly exercised some oversight, and they refused to vote on the proposal. And so, for right now, the status quo continues, and people can continue to receive physical mail and packages from loved ones and things like that. And I just want to quickly address that one of the most common false narratives that is used to justify digitization of mail is the issue of drugs. And, there's just this obsession with, oh, so many drugs are coming through the mail. And so we've got to get rid of physical mail to stop the flow of drugs coming into, jails and prisons. But again and again and again, the data, the reality shows that the biggest contributor to drugs in jail and prisons and in carceral settings are staff, correctional officers. They're the ones bringing in the drugs. It's not to say that it never happens through the mail, but in terms of what actually poses the greater risk to, the safety and security of the building and those inside is 100% staff. Um, and this is just such a common practice. Staff are the ones bringing them in. They're the ones smuggling in not just drugs, but cell phones and other forms of contraband, because they can use them, as leverage. They can use them for trading, for, creating additional abuse of power dynamics, right, between those that they have control over. Anyway, so I'll also include some links to this update about Rikers, which is really exciting. And again, I'm sure this proposal is going to come back because, these private companies like Securus, are just looking for any way to make more money. And, prison mail is the current frontier, but it's a huge win as of right now. So I'm going to end the episode there. I just want to celebrate some three really, really positive developments: expansion of the right to vote in both the state of New Mexico and Minnesota, and at least for now, rejection of a proposal to digitize mail at Rikers Jail in New York City. So, with those positive thoughts, I'll close today's episode. Thanks so much for listening and see you next time.